Welcome to all of you. My name is Rosie. I'm the Program and Volunteer Coordinator with GROW, and we very much appreciate you tuning in and joining us this Friday morning. So without further ado, I will hand it on over to Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Pasqua, and I'm assisting with this webinar today. Been assisting for quite a few webinars in the past couple of months, so some of the names look familiar. Thank you again so much for taking the time to participate today. Our guest today is Lorraine Medici. I don't know if I'm even saying it right. Medici, there we go, Lorraine. She's the Director of Training and Development over at Express Employment Professionals of Grand Rapids. And the subject matter of today's webinar is the importance of responding to everything that we've been dealt with lately. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence. And this is a terminology that, Lorraine, it's been used quite a bit as of late. And so we're going to dive deep into that. And what we're going to also be able to do is allow you the opportunity to ask any questions. And again, if you can utilize the chat function, we'll make sure that we direct those questions to Lorraine so she can answer them accordingly. So, Lorraine, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what it is you do on a day-to-day and how this comes into play into your world?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Actually, we're going to be spending a little bit more time on engaging the remote worker today. And here at Express, I am the training and development director. And so I have the privilege and honor to be working with folks at all different levels. And this pandemic is definitely one that has thrown everybody off kilter, right? We were just talking about this, we don't have a handbook. We don't have really any prehistorical pieces on, well, how do we do all this? And so we're sort of winging it. And one of the pieces today, which is a part of emotional intelligence, is really how do I engage folks remotely, right? Some of you that are listening might be a remote worker. I was a remote worker for 6 weeks, and we are an essential employer, so I have the opportunity to come back and really connect with folks. And so as a trainer and a coach, I will tell you right now, I can definitely tell you engagement is a huge topic. And if any of you have heard of the Gallup poll people, they are one of the biggest and largest well-known poll people that do a lot of study around engagement. And for the last 10 to 12 years, there has not been a lot of change in how folks are engaging. It's actually pretty low. And so now with the pandemic mess, we really have to recognize that we may have lost some traction in that. And so how do we pick it up and do it again? So let's get started. And I know that Jennifer may jump in and ask questions as she's listening. And folks, if you have questions as well, don't even hesitate to get started and ask those questions. So I want to encourage you to just sit back, relax, be intentional in your listening. I'm sure what I'm going to share with you is probably not a lot of earth-shattering news, but what I want to encourage you to do is just hear one thing that resonates with you that you can kind of grab onto and right away put it into action. So that's my challenge. One bite-sized piece of information or tip that you can apply immediately. All right, so let's get going here and let's look at our agenda together. What will you fill your cup with besides coffee and tea this morning? That's kind of my question. What are you going to really kind of take in? And we're going to talk about what is engagement. Why is attachment important? That was something I kind of played with back and forth whether or not to talk about, but I do want to bring it up because as things improve, as things get better, this piece on attachment is very critical. We're also going to talk about what things you need to consider for those people who are working remotely. And lastly, I have some toolbox necessities, things that you're going to want to do and use right away. So let's get going and look at our first piece here. And here's what the leading authority, the Gallup poll people, say about employee engagement. And that is, engaged employees are those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and workplace. So you can see that I really am very intentional about the kind of images that I want to present virtually. We lose a lot virtually in learning and development. And so when you see some of these slides, I'm hoping that it's actually going to inspire some thoughts for you, some ideas, maybe some emotion. Notice the words there that you see for the Gallup poll definition is involved, enthusiastic, and committed. Those are those three words and verbs that really what we're looking for when we talk about engagement. Wikipedia, we got to have a little bit of wiki out there, says employee engagement is an emergent property of the relationship between an organization and its employees. An engaged employee is one who is fully absorbed by, enthusiastic about their work, and consequently takes positive action to further their organization's reputation of interest. So this is just adding a little bit more to the pie. And I just wanted to set the tone so that when you're thinking about where's my engagement level, you can be thinking about these critical words of enthusiasm and being involved and committed. Okay, so here's some interesting statistics that we want to look at. 53% of people are disengaged in their jobs. At some level, there's 53%. That's huge. The other term that we see is actively disengaged, and that's at 13%. And actually, that's come down, which is a good sign. And so those folks look like they are really maybe being more toxic in organizations. They're sticking around where they probably should be leaving because they're so unhappy. And then lastly, 34% of people are highly engaged. So we would love to see that number, of course, get back up there. So my question to you is, where are you and your people on that spectrum? With everything that's going on, someone who was once engaged could be now dropping into the disengagement level because of the pandemic. Engagement is an umbrella term that sort of incorporates a lot of different elements. One of the things that it looks like at is an attachment, and I'll be talking about that here. We personally use a measurement tool that looks at attachment, how I feel attached to the organization, how motivated I am, and what does my performance look like. And it's called the AMP. So if you ever have any questions on that, you can ask me about that. All right, so let's chat a little bit, a quick word on attachment. Think back when you last started in a new role, like we all have. What was it like those first few weeks? Can you think about that? How did you feel that first day? If you want to type in on the chat, I would love to see what were some of the things that you felt during that first few weeks, but especially that first day. How do you think that experience influenced your engagement in the first 3 to 6 months?
And maybe it would be interesting too to see where the industries fall under who is being represented today. So if you want to share that with us, that would be fantastic. If you're a new entrepreneur, if somebody has a long-term business and has been working on this, if you're a leader, because I'm sure the answer to this would really depend upon whether you're a leader or if you're just getting hired in as an employee. So it would be, if you would love to share, we would love to see that.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. Very true. So
we've got a comment from Andrea here. She said she is overwhelmed by needing to homeschool and work full-time in higher education remotely, which, boy, oh boy, kudos to those that have to do that at this time.
Oh, incredible, stressful, and really learning to be a juggler, right? And so we're going to look at some of those things, and that feeling of feeling overwhelmed is very natural. And when you think back about the time when you first, as we're talking about attachment, did you find yourself asking questions like, where am I supposed to be? Am I comfortable? Does my manager like me? Does my team like me? Did I feel confident even participating in this meeting that's for my first time? Am I getting along with others? Those are things that I want you to be thinking about now, because you may be bringing in people, but also for your own self if you have to change work or change jobs. Human beings are definitely genetically and neurologically geared to forms of attachment. Think about of the bond, especially between mom and baby. And we see this in nature every day, right? When a new employee joins an organization, they actually go through what we call an attachment process. And that's the same thing like a parent and a child, or between people in a romantic relationship. And just as in these personal relationships, an employee won't become engaged as well if they don't feel attached. And that attachment really does happen, they say, in the first 120 days. So if you're not currently hiring, you might be in the future. And I just want to make sure that I briefly touched about this and looked at attachment so that you could be aware of it moving forward. And so unlike attachment, which has a very short life. That's why it's so critical to help people understand how they can feel at home in their new place. Engagement does not have that same time sensitivity. But some of the things that we want to look at in attachment, first of all, here is security. Do I feel safe here? And without you even knowing about it, it's not necessarily do I feel physically safe? It's an emotional safety. Do I feel like I could ask a question, nobody's going to laugh at me? Can I, maybe step aside and just be more observing as I'm learning what's going on? It's all of those kind of securities that we want to think about. Trust and value. Can I trust the people who are my peers now? And do I feel valued at this new place? Because everybody's looking at everybody, and especially when you're new, everybody's checking the new person out, right? And thirdly, here is acceptance. How do I learn to be accepted? What do I need to do? So I'm juggling all of that stuff. And they actually say you really don't think about your job per se as much as how much you're navigating the new dynamics of your new home. And lastly, here is belonging. We know that when we feel engaged, a lot of times it's because I feel like I'm at home. And so, again, this was just a quick thing on attachment. Jennifer, any questions or thoughts before I move into engagement?
Well, I would like to acknowledge those who have shared where they're from and what they're doing and how they're feeling at this time. Angelita, she's the owner of a private therapy practice, all overwhelmed over there, from going into person-to-person sessions to 100% online, of course. We have Elizabeth, who is a human resources manager of a credit union in Muskegon. Now, this is interesting. They're having a hard time engaging the remote employees and finding those fun activities to keep them engaged. And I think a lot of the leadership, in West Michigan, across the country, even, is having a hard time with that, because there is a thing called Zoom burnout. And we're, finding that the need for face-to-face is so important right now. So how can you do that when it's not too much, because you are utilizing this for your day-to-day work?
Absolutely. And Elizabeth, hang on, because I have not forgot about fun. We're going to actually talk about some of that because it is absolutely critical. Okay, so now let's talk about the challenges that potentially remote workers face. Again, we need to keep looking at this situationally, because for some, these challenges may not be an issue working remotely, and for others, it's big issues. So we're going to look at 6 challenges, and I want to encourage you to pay attention to 1 or 2 that you can work on right away. Which challenges are you already addressing, and which ones do you feel that you probably need spend a little bit more time on? Your biggest tool right now is finding out more information on these challenges by putting on your detective hat and asking questions to better gauge what's going on. I can tell you hands down, the more you can ask and listen, the better you're going to be able to engage with your remote worker. Limit, and I mean limit, asking closed-ended questions that typically give you yes and no answers. Okay, like, are you doing okay? Can you come up with some other ways in prioritizing? You want to watch those kind of questions, and you want to really start asking questions that start with what, how, help me understand, and share more. Okay. What, how, help me understand and share more. And I'll talk more about these questions here in a minute, but we're gonna look at each of these areas individually. And I'm gonna actually give you those questions. Okay. So the first one is self-discipline here. And self-discipline is a really important piece for being a remote worker. And how do you know your remote workers have self-discipline? What does it look like? So here are some questions right away that you can use in your conversation to help understand, because we do want to put some parameters around what your day looks like. So how does self-discipline look differently at home versus when you were back at work, right? That could be a question. What helps you stay disciplined, right? And thirdly, where might you still be challenged? Now, those are 3 great questions. And here's what I want to caution you about. Try not to give them the answer. And what I mean by that is by saying, let's just use that last question for that. Where might you be challenged? So like, I'm thinking back, was it Andrea who has doing homeschooling? I'm not sure if I'm right on that.
Yes, it is Andrea.
Yeah, thank you. And so Andrea, you might be going, if I said to you, where might you still be challenged? Are you still challenged with homeschooling? Are you still struggling maybe to keep up on some of the education that you're doing? And when I do that, I've really kind of given you answers. And instead, just ask the question and let the person respond. So finding out about self-discipline. The next one is prioritizing. How do you help your people prioritize? Maybe they're doing great at it, but here's some 3 questions. Tell me how you're prioritizing. What's working? And just again, be listening. Where are there still challenges? Again, you want to hear how your remote worker is being challenged or really doing well on prioritizing. And you might get answers like this. Well, I kind of know what I have to do at the beginning of the day. So I kind of look at it and I just kind of figure it out. I'll probably work on this in the morning and do this in the afternoon. Try to get a little bit more information. If you get some vague answers, be courageous enough to go, tell me how maybe yesterday morning looked like, or tell me a little bit about what this morning is going to look like, so that I can really understand what your world looks like. Jennifer, did you have a question?
Well, no, I thought maybe if anybody wanted to chime in, just a reminder that they can do so on the chat. So Let's utilize that for the questions.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thirdly is clarity of deliverables. And I'll tell you right now, that is on you. You have to identify what the deliverables are expected of the other person. If you have it in your mind and you understand that this report is due tomorrow, or you need to make sure that Zoom meetings are being conducted, it's really important that you're discussing with the other person, here's what I'm expecting, and be specific around it. Let them know, hey, this is when I need it done. And we don't want to say things like, if you can get this report to me by next week, that would be great. Because what is next week? Is that Monday or is that Friday or anything in between? So to prevent issues of misunderstanding, you want to say things, I'm going to need that report by Wednesday next week by noon. Okay. Now, is that reasonable and doable for you to get that done? You're having that conversation. So you want to ask for feedback. And what I mean about this, guys, is feedback is if I'm talking to my remote worker and we're chatting and I'm saying, hey, this is what's going on. Got something going on over here with the other team. There's a lot of information going back and forth, and you might not even be doing a Zoom meeting. You might be just doing it on a phone. I always try to say, listen, we just went through a lot right now, a lot of information. I would love it if you could just make sure you and I are aligned. What is it that you understand that we need to do? Just again, hearing the feedback. You don't want to say, so are we good? Do you understand what I need to have you do? We want to use an open-ended question by saying, what do you understand that needs to be done? Okay, so I think those are important. When we look at self-discipline, prioritizing, and clarifying deliverables, I tried to give you guys some questions that you could use right off the bat. Here's for the other areas, distractions. Anybody distracted out there? If you are, please write yes, right? If you're not distracted, we'd love to know what you're doing to keep you from being that way. But here's what I would ask a remote worker. What are your biggest distractions? And just really be listening to that. And then asking them, how do you manage them? And then there's going to be some that people can manage and others that probably not so good in managing, right? And anybody, Andrea or Elizabeth, anybody else that maybe has a good handle on that? If you want to share, we can take the mic, let you guys talk on that. That would be awesome. If there's anybody, you can just let us know on that. But again, we're all distracted, aren't we, on so many ways. Let's look at social contact.
I think Elizabeth is chiming in, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Says that she ensures that she turns off her email when in a meeting to be fully engaged, along with putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. I know that within the company I work for, we've come up with a set of rules in terms of, doing these online meetings, and, turning off email is certainly one of them because it is easy to get distracted. But it also makes it challenging because of the fact the camera is at the very top of the laptop. So it's hard to really see if that person is engaged or if they're trying to follow along in the agenda or if they're taking notes, because we are all such multitaskers naturally that it's hard to just stay still.
Yeah, thank you. Such a good point. And I love that about turning off the email. And I'm actually doing another webinar, a training this afternoon, and that will be one of the things. And what I think Jennifer's saying is that you do have to have kind of some rules of engagement, right? And to say, in order to get the most of this, because we lose so much when we're not face-to-face. So thank you.
Andrea is also chiming in, Lorraine. She says her biggest distraction are her kids needing assistance with school. So when they are in and out of her office space, it makes it hard for her to have to adjust muting and turning off the video. And I know I've been in a variety of meetings where that's happened, but I think we just have to be okay with that at this point, because it is a new world and no one knows what's going on beyond what you see on this front screen of a laptop. Yeah. Whatever's happening out there is really difficult.
Yeah. And I think, it's also kids not knowing how to do this. And this is so different, right? And so it's going to take some time and conversation with children to say, mom's home or dad's home now. And this is kind of the new normal, and it's going to take some time. So there's a learning curve, not only for us, but also for our kids, right? And eventually I think those things will kind of work themselves out, especially if there's some parameters. So
I love the side conversation that's happening between Andrea and Elizabeth right now, offering some advice about dealing with kids. So thank you too for sharing that, because I think that, it leads into the next point of your mental health of staying sane as you try to navigate through your own career.
Absolutely. Yeah. So before we get to mental health, I just want to just a couple questions out there for social contact is asking the remote worker, who are you staying in contact with? And what and who do you miss? I think it's just okay to talk about that stuff. Is that who do you miss and what do you miss? And just that acceptance of it. And then how are you dealing kind of with the whole social distancing? What's going on with that and the changes? And then as we're talking about our mental health here, some questions to ask, how are you doing really? I noticed that somebody asked me that about a week ago, and I really appreciated that. It was like, how are you doing? It was more like, how are you doing really in all of this? And it was sort of like, I want to give you permission to just kind of feel what you're feeling. And I thought that was really very empathetic and kind of them to do that. So what emotions are you noticing for yourself? One of the things I was telling Rosie and Jennifer last week, I really struggled with kind of having this, wow, I can't seem to think straight. And I feel sometimes disoriented. And I was wondering if there was something going on medically or what was happening, and finding out that this is so normal in what's happening right now. That these waves, and I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but all of a sudden you get this little kind of wave of a little bit of anxiety, like, what's going to happen next, right? So all of those things are so normal in the stress like this. And thirdly, how are you taking care of yourself? Really, and if they're just like, well, I'm trying to just relax, dig deeper. What does that mean? What does relaxed mean? One of the things I did on Memorial Day weekend, I didn't get near a screen. I got my hands dirty in my garden. The dirtier, the better. And I had to just be in love with the earth again, So again, these are some things that we think about when we're talking about considerations for remote workers. Any questions before we talk about toolbox necessities? Any thoughts there? Okay. I want to make sure that you guys walk out of here with some things that you can do right away. And it's 4 parts here. And that the first one is communicate. And what I want you to think about is when you have to check in is identify the number of times you're going to check in. So if you have somebody that is pretty self-sufficient, kind of is in their routine, you might talk with them and say, hey, outside of meetings, I'm going to just chat with you maybe twice a week. I'm going to call you on Tuesday and Friday. Just a real quick, just check in and see how you're doing. Make sure that you're really trying to identify the number of times that you check in with somebody. Discuss it with them and say how you feel about that and really stick to it so that if a remote worker is waiting for that call or that they know there's a check-in, there's that connection. And we got to make that. And the connection might be just something about outside of work. It doesn't have to be about business. The other thing that I put here is use different forms. I think it's kind of fun if you can juggle it a little bit. If I'm going to touch base with you, I might text you. And on Friday, I might give you a call. And then next Tuesday, I might just pop you an email. And then maybe the next time I'll call you again, whatever. Think about the different forms that we can do in staying in touch because the check-ins might be just a quick little piece to communicate how that person's doing. Now, reverse expectations. What I mean about this is you're going to want your remote workers to do the same. And you might just ask them, what's the best way for you to communicate back? How many times a week do you want to do that? And again, it could be email because it's very, very easy. And I'm sure those who are listening today recognize that, gosh, I haven't even heard from so-and-so in like 3 days. And it sort of leaves this vacuum of what's going on. And it's not so much that we don't trust people. It's more like it just feels like there's this disconnect. So make sure that you're asking them as well. And again, the check-ins can be business, but they can just be, hey, it's Friday. I just wanted to give you a quick call. Angelita, I just wanted to wish you a great weekend. I hope you're doing something fun. Have anything planned, maybe going to the park or whatever that you might say. But it's just that little bit of extra touch to communicate with the remote worker. Is anybody doing anything differently than what I've shared there that anybody would like to let us know about? Please make sure you let us know on that chat. Jennifer, are you doing anything at all or anything at work that's happening with your peers that you feel like the communication is improving and doing some neat things?
Well, we certainly are meeting more often. We do what was a monthly company meeting. We're doing it every Monday for a quick check-in.
Nice.
I think you naturally you have a relationship with someone in your office that you would normally be getting a cup of coffee with in the morning, have that water cooler talk. And so that's been done a lot on text. But one of the rules of engagement, I think that is so important as we talk about this, is that we're not allowed to just use text. That if we're having a meeting, just a one-on-one with somebody, we are encouraged to use FaceTime or something where we can see each other because so much gets lost in translation when we are talking via text or email. So I think that that has increased quite a bit. And at this point, I think people are needing to see each other's faces and it helps.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing up FaceTime. I totally forgot about that. And that is, for so many people, that's what they're doing in their homes for, kids with grandparents or other family members or friends that we're not seeing. But you're absolutely right. Seeing that face and those emotions and the expression and the smiles, it just goes a long way. So I appreciate that. Okay, another besides communication is that I want to share here is really looking at connection. And I know we've already kind of talked about it, but look at this slide for a minute, right? This gal here has got all these different people that she's got to be thinking about. They're all unique personalities and the ways that they see things. And when we think about connecting, it really does come down to this. It's one human being with another human being. And that's what I think we want to, I think if anything is going to come out of this pandemic, that's probably one of the biggest things, is that I really realize that I have to be more patient and I have to be more understanding. I have heard that from several of our my group coaching teams, that when I ask them, what is the greatest thing that you're learning? That's what they're saying, is that I realize that I'm being more patient, I'm listening better, and I'm just being connected to another human being, where before, not so much. So, I heard this great quote that challenges don't come to break us, they come to reveal us. And isn't that a great saying when you really think about it? Challenges don't come to break us, they come to reveal us. So what is it revealing here? To a lot of the leaders that I'm talking to, it's saying, you know what, I haven't been very patient. I haven't really listened well. And now I'm forced to do that. Next is really listen to understand, not listen to get your point across. It's really about doing that active listening. And so, our minds are going a mile a minute, and we have to really focus. I'll give you a statistic that I think is phenomenal. The average person speaks between 150 and 200 words a minute. 150 to 200 words a minute. I'm probably speaking at the max 150 because I'm trying to pace my words. I'm trying to inflect my tone because I can't see folks as like I could if I was in a training. The ability for the average human being to take in words and information is 650 to 750 words a minute. So think about that. I'm speaking to you at 150, but your mind is going 650 to 750 words. So our brain is naturally filling in gaps. And that's why, Jennifer, to your point, we got to have those rules of engagement, because it's so quickly to go, I'm going to go answer that email, answer that text. Oh shoot, did I put the garage door down? And I could be totally listening to what you're doing. So again, listen to understand. As a coach, I have a big window over here on my right, and I'm usually facing this way when I'm talking to people. And I have to be very, very intentional that I don't watch the traffic go out that way. So again, listen to understand. Again, we talked a little bit about empathizing. You may not agree with what the other person is saying or feeling necessarily. That's really not what empathy is about. Empathy is much more about understanding that it makes sense that they feel that way because they are in that. And so if you can truly understand it because you've been through it, that deepens the empathy. But there's times where I've known a couple people are like, I get that this is hard, but we just got to plow through. I don't want to hear all the excuses. That's somebody who's probably not really slowing down and going, you know what? Here's somebody who's got 4 kids at home that they got to school them now, and they got to keep working 40 hours a week. Oh, and my husband might be home. So that's somebody who needs to kind of broaden that perspective and really go, what would that be like if all of a sudden I had all these people in my house, right? Connecting, suspending judgment is one of my favorite things that I like to talk about with leaders and folks who are just kind of stuck. Again, in that example that I just used, it's very quick for us to jump in and make a judgment call based on our life lens, right? Our life lens, and each of us has one, sees life, sees patterns, sees people, situations in certain ways, faster than we can even really be aware of it. Our brain has taken all that information. And sometimes we have to just recognize that even though I see it and I feel like I want to make a judgment, unless I know something, I don't know, right? Unless I know, I don't know. So I look at it as a brick, that brick of judgment. And sometimes I'm right about my judgment, but until I know, I don't. So I kind of move that brick to my shelf, and then all of a sudden my perspective is open and I can see things a little bit better. And then lastly, how can I help? And that's the connection question. What's one thing that I can do? Even if you use that question, what's one thing that I can do? It does help the listener of that question focus better in the brain. What's one thing that I could do? So that's about connection. Going to move on to number 3 on your toolbox necessities, and that's innovate. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Again, check out this imagery, right? It's bold, it's bright, it entices you to go, what's going on there? And the first thing is I want you to disrupt your traditional thinking. And what I mean by that is, okay, we've got remote workers at home. I might be at home working. I cannot think the same way as if we were all here together. So I have to think outside the box. I have to disrupt what I think. And you have to encourage that with your remote workers as well. Ask them, what's one thing you can do very differently that you've never done before, and you don't need to even worry about if it'll work or not. Just be creative, be innovative, and think about disrupting traditional thinking. Ask for ideas. I love this when my boss said, what do you want to do differently at home that's still going to help you perform what you need to do for training? And she just asked me that question and let me think about it. I said, you know what? I don't know if I can answer that right now, but I'm kind of energized by that. So let me process it. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And what she did is she empowered me, right? She empowered me. Instead of just going, I need you to do this, 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 and this, she asked me for ideas and how to make working from home better and still being able to perform and put out virtual training. So it's always great when you can encourage and ask your people. Be excited. Be excited, even though we are going through very challenging times. We're all getting antsy. I think Rosie was saying when we were talking earlier, it's like, it's so gorgeous out. I don't want to have to think about putting a mask on, right? And so there's all of these things. Like I noticed a couple of weeks ago, my vacuum cleaner broke. And I went, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to, oh, wait a minute. No, I don't even know if they're open. Are like vacuum shops open? Like we have to do all this double thinking where before it was just like you pick up the phone and you dial, right? So with all that going on, all that noise in the background, I'm going to still encourage you to be excited for your people with them. Generate that excitement, and we're going to get to how to do that very shortly here. So any questions, Jennifer, or comments? I thought I'd just stop for a minute.
Nope, I think everybody's just taking it all in, Lorraine. I would keep on going.
All right, great. And here's the fun part, who was looking for some, what do I do with my people? And again, check out these beautiful people on this slide, right? The first thing is excitement. When I'm talking about this again, it's building off of that last part on innovative, is think about celebrating with excitement. Disrupt that traditional thinking about what you used to do for fun with your people and get excited about it. And I'm going to share some ideas here with you in just a moment. And when we talk about celebration, again, ask your people, what do you want to do? What would be something fun we could do remotely? We can't all be together. So what ideas do you have? And I'm going to share this with you, what we've been doing. And mix it up. I love this woman here. Ask every generation what would be a great idea. For some of the older generations, this is difficult to do. Think about how do I share something fun on this Zoom thing, right? And so getting them involved in a way, and maybe you have a younger generation helping an older generation going, what can you do, and I'll help you get it out there. So here's some of the things that we've done so far. The very first 2 weeks, we did bingo. And bingo came out 4 times a day, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. And one of the team members came up with it on her own. She went, I love bingo. Who doesn't love bingo? So she sent everybody a sheet, and it basically had a list of our clients' names. But you can do anything. Do something very specific to your organization that you might see names of people that you serve. Maybe it's employees' names, whatever you want to do. But 4 times a day, we were all looking for that next word. And here's the prize. We got 15 minutes of extra time to do whatever we wanted. Now, we have a wonderful massager gadget in the back of the room. People could use that when we all came back. You could take 15 minutes if you want to go down to Big B and get a coffee. And here's the thing, guys, it really wasn't the prize. It was the excitement of bingo. And people loved it. And people were like, I haven't even been called yet. How's this going on? And you could see the back and forth banter. And it was so much fun. The next
is something that I think that will resonate with what Elizabeth was talking about earlier. So you should definitely keep in mind.
The next 2 weeks, we did something where one of the our employees said, I would love to do just a fun 5 to 6 questions. And he would send it to everybody. And it was sort of like just highlighting this person. What was your most embarrassing moment? What's your absolute food that you cannot stand that everybody else likes? What's one of your favorite memories growing up as a child? What is one thing that people don't know about you that you would like to share? And so every day, twice a day, we would highlight an employee. And what was so cool is we were connecting with people. And there was things like, really, I had no idea you love to play chess. I love to play chess too. And we learned by just having these kind of employee highlights. And actually what we called them was celebrity spotlights. And it was just a fun, kind of cool way to engage everybody. And now we have this beautiful bio of everybody in a fun way on coronavirus 2020. The next thing that we did, so that was for 2 weeks. The next thing that we did was who's that Witto baby? And we all turned in baby pictures of each other. And twice a day, these baby pictures get posted. And it's like, who is this widow baby? And then there would be one little clue at the bottom. And so twice a day, again, people would see this little baby, and then we would have kind of a leaderboard on who had the most points, who was getting the most right. And so we're just wrapping that up right now. Those have been some of the fun things that we've done during the day. In addition to that, we've had my training partner had a virtual wine tasting party. We all at our individual homes after work had wine or beer. And John just so happens to be kind of a connoisseur. And he was talking to us about just understanding some basics about wine. And he had on his kitchen table just different parts about the wine and understanding about the wine glass, and really informative. I mean, it was fun. Last week, we had one of our employees' husband is a chef, and he taught us how to do a very simple pasta dish with sun-dried tomatoes and arugula, and it was wonderful because we all got to do it at the same time, and then we sat down in our homes and we could watch everybody just eating. So again, not a lot of money to do anything. If anything, it was just fun. And now we know more about each other. Now we know that we have a couple peers who have some really interesting specialties. So I hope that's giving you guys a few ideas on how to celebrate. When folks are more engaged, they're more likely to be motivated. When they're more motivated, they typically perform better. When they perform better, there's higher morale, and it really builds your culture, your brand. So I wanted to just kind of see that progression. And then lastly, Q&A, if there was any, and then a thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. I don't know what is up with the audio, but we appreciate you getting us through the end. For those of you that are still on and have questions for Lorraine, there is her information. Rosie, I'm certain, will be sharing that out. And then also we will get a link out to you for this particular webinar. And you see Lorraine's information right there, as well as her email. She did already indicate that she'll be passing along a PDF of this presentation. So we thank you so much for that, Lorraine. And Rosie, any last things that people should know?
Nope, not too much else. As you said, Jennifer, I will go ahead and send out the PDF or the PowerPoint, and then I'll also pass along Lorraine's contact information should you need that.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation, and please continue to watch for more of these webinars that a lot of you have already suggested some things that we should do as well. So thank you.
Thank you.